In this video, we'll talk to some of our farmers about the different kinds of strip tillage equipment available, as well as their recommendations for farmers wanting to make the transition into strip till.
I'm Mike Cornelson, producer.
Hi, I'm Warren Schneckenberger. Farm here just outside of Morrisburg, Ontario on our farm named Cedar Lodge Farms.
Christine Schneckenberger. I grew up in Brant County. I moved up here to Morrisburg when I met Warren, and I have farmed with you for the past 5 years, you and your dad and mom.
So Warren and Christine, how did you, as you started to get into strip till, how did you get familiar with the different pieces of equipment out there and make a decision on which unit you wanted to go with?
We spent about 6 years going to conferences, speaking to producers, learning as much as we could before jumping in on anything. Through that, we settled on a Coulter machine, which from talking with other producers from not just in Ontario, but across North America, we knew with our rocky soil and our shallow soil that a shank likely wasn't going to work for us, particularly in the spring. So we settled on a Coulter machine.
So carrying on from that question, do you have any mentors that you followed that got you to where you are?
Yeah, there definitely was mentorship. Perhaps not an individual or maybe even a group of individuals, but it was a lot of relationship building over that 6-year journey, trying to educate ourselves on why we wanted to strip till and how it would help us.
So as conditions change for you guys stripping, say, fall versus springtime, different previous crops, or if you move to farms with different soil textures, Mike, do you find yourselves making any adjustments to the strip tiller at all for those?
Yeah, so we actually personally have never ran our shank unit in the spring. When we had our Coulter unit, we would run the Coulter unit 6 inches in the fall, about 2 inches in the spring. Now with this unit, probably our biggest adjustment is between cover crops and no cover crops. When we're in cover crops, we need to run our row cleaners a little bit more aggressive, try to get a little bit more residue out of the way, trying to allow that soil to break up a little bit. Because the biggest thing with cover crops is you have a good root mass, that soil does not want to explode and make that nice fluffy strip. So another thing is trying to get more speed out, and I think speed is more important when you have cover crops than out of cover crops, just to get that shattering action of the soil. And I think that's the biggest things we change.
So Mike, you talk about your preference is more towards fall strip till. When you're making that fall strip, what are you looking for? What do you need in that berm?
Yeah, so the most important thing I think with a fall strip is consistency. Since we're a stale seed bed in the spring, we want a smooth seed bed for the planter for performance. For consistent seed depth. We don't mind a little bit of chunks in it, but you don't want bare spots in the strip where you have a hole and you don't want a hill. Like, as long as it's consistent, it can be consistently a little chunky, but it's just about being consistent.
So Mike, you talked a little bit about what a good strip would look like in the fall for you guys, but you guys are also making spring strips. What's an ideal spring strip look like to you?
Yeah, so when we were doing spring strips, I think you want to look, it's a little bit different situation. You don't have the winters or break down those chunks, so it needs to be a more fine strip. You don't want air pockets in it, so that's why we like going a little bit more shallow to make sure you have more of the right conditions in that soil, because it doesn't have the winter to fix itself, let's call it. So that's kind of what we're looking for. Like, if you run your field cultivator, that's what in the spring, you want your spring strip tiller to almost like a similar looking finish.
So there's a lot of talk about Coulters versus shank machines, and how did you gain the experience that led you to the Coulter machine, and what are the things that others have to consider as they start this journey?
So we had side dressed our corn with anhydrous ammonia for decades, and so we are well familiar with what pulling a shank through our soil is like, and we were successful with anhydrous, and I think we could have been successful with a shank strip tiller, but with stones, springs, shear bolts, broken springs, downtime, and also with our clay soil in a wet time of year, like late fall, or trying to get a crop in the ground, a year like 2017 or even 2019 come to mind, with fighting weather systems, a shank we would probably have struggled in our soils. So the Coulter is I think a lot more forgiving, but there's definitely pluses and minuses to each. Fertility, placement, it's a broad topic with a lot of avenues.
And what would your advice to new entrants into strip till be in terms of making that choice?
Know your soil, know your subsoil, know what kind of tillage you want to do, if you want deep or if you're satisfied with just the 6 to 10 inches that ours does to make the nice seed bed.
So what would you say about the appearance of your crops now that you've moved to strip till, you know, throughout the whole growing season compared to what you were previously doing?
Yeah, so our strip till corn and the wheat stubble is definitely a more uniform stand. It's quicker at the gate. We're planting it now, strip till corn and wheat stubble earlier, where probably our first planted corn versus our last planted corn, so just it's more advanced stage crop. It's a healthy looking crop. I think that's because we're still getting that no-till or conventional or conservation tillage benefit of the soil. So that's the main things we're seeing. It's just a healthier crop. Yield-wise, we're in there with anybody else. Yeah, I think we're getting all the benefits of everything with the strip till system.